Music and a sign. All right. Good afternoon. My name is James Sheppard, and I would like to thank the Libertarian Party of Washington for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I am here to talk about fear. Unfortunately, it is an emotion I am well aware of at this moment. I have a fear. This is my, as you can probably tell, I'm a bit nervous being up here in front of all of you, no matter how friendly you might be. But my hope here today is that as you watch the spectacle of me conquering my fear of public speaking, that some may be inspired to conquer their own fears or help others conquer theirs. So you may be asking, who is James Sheppard, and why is he speaking on fear here today? Am I a politician? Goodness, no.
Yay!
Thank you. Cue the jokes. Okay, so am I a psychologist? No, I'm not. But what I am is a middle-class Washingtonian, and a part of the very group that we need to appeal to as libertarians. To reject fear and embrace liberty, for the biggest obstacle to liberty is fear and the willingness to give up liberty for security. So let's get a working definition of fear. Fear is an unpleasant feeling of anxiety or apprehension caused by the presence or anticipation of real or imagined danger. It can manifest itself as stuttering or forgetting what you're going to say when you're giving a speech. Sorry, thank you. So everyone here has experienced fear in their lifetime, is that correct? A show of hands of everybody who has not. Oh, okay. It is a normal human emotion based on self-preservation. Remember as a child, hiding underneath your covers from the monster, the boogeyman, or whoever, and as long as you hid underneath those covers, you were safe. As long as you avoided your fear, you were safe. Going into the teen years, it might manifest itself as avoiding the bully in the hallway, so you run all the way around the school to get to the class that's just 2 rooms over. I heard stories about this. I'm not speaking from experience. So, as an adult, it quite possibly could arise when someone asks you to speak at the Washington State Libertarian Convention on April 20th, 2015 in Bellingham, Washington at 2 p.m. Your initial response would be, I don't know, let me ask my wife to see if it's okay. Of course, you're just trying to make excuses and trying to avoid what scares you. Again, I want to point out that I heard a rumor about this. I don't know this from experience as well. So, now, is fear of the monster, bully, or public speaking real or imagined? A little of each, correct? But remember, just because fear is imagined does not make that fear any less real to the person who's experiencing it. So of all 3 of those examples, the avoidance was what happened. That is how you deal with your fears. So is the fear of freedom as simple as the socialist George Bernard Shaw stated in Liberty Means Responsibility, and that is why most men dread it? Perhaps. That does not let libertarians and liberty lovers off the hook, and our failure over the years to educate the people that fear is one of the most powerful emotions, and because of that, people lean to security versus liberty. So because of that, let's go over some of how our critics see us. Just last week, Bill Maher had a little interview, and he gave his opinion on libertarians. I don't know if any of you caught this. It was on Facebook on our website, Libertarian. He had stated how he used to be a libertarian until the party went nuts, quote, and that in a libertarian society you'd have air poisoned and water poisoned and food would be poisoned and there'd be skeletons defecating in rivers. He didn't say it so eloquently as I did, but... So, is that fear? You know that's fear. Is it real or imagined? Well, it's real to the people who believe that. And unfortunately, there are people who believe ignorant people like Bill Maher. How do I know people believe this? Because 2 days later at work, I had someone come up to me and tell me actually that libertarians do not believe exactly what he had just said. They had repeated what he had stated, and I went into about a 30-minute rant on Bill Maher at that time, and but that's what we're dealing with, and we're dealing with an imagined fear, but it's real to those people. So how do libertarians and libertarian lovers combat this inaccurate perception of us and the fear that causes it? Well, it's by education and making ourselves visible to the public. I have not been a libertarian my entire life. As I had stated earlier when I got up here briefly, I came across a Ron Paul video on YouTube, and it led me to libertarianism. I wasn't converted overnight, but it got me to look into it and find what freedom means. I'm not saying that Ron Paul videos are the answer, but we can make our own videos. We cannot sit back and let Judge Jim Gray or Gary Johnson or Ron Paul fight our fight for us. We must stop being spectators in our lives and start being players. We need to educate, and for goodness sakes, we need to make sure the internet does not become regulated in any way, shape, or form. I like to call the internet a playground. It's a term I gave it a few years back, but we definitely need to keep it free for the exposure that it gives us, because it gives us a voice that would otherwise be silenced by the mainstream media. So let's get back to how we are perceived by many as being uncaring and for the rich, and that libertarians want anarchy and the deaths of children and the poor. Unfortunately, it's something I've heard many times voicing my opinion on libertarianism. The only way to conquer this fear is to confront it, engage these people and discuss their fears. Help them see that freedom is not something to be afraid of, but oppression and lack of choices is. I was told when I was a young man by my father to not talk about politics and religion with others. I obeyed that saying until recently. Now I talk politics with everyone I can. You can ask my wife about that one. How can we become smarter and conquer fear if we do not discuss our differences? We must be a player, not a spectator. An online friend turned me on to Ralph Waldo Emerson, the American poet and individualist. I came across a quote of his that I think fits our party, and quite possibly should be embraced by by the party. The quote is this: "Live, let live, and help live." Live and let live we all know about. Helping live is even more important. Is it living hiding underneath the covers? Is it living running around the school hiding from the bully? And is it living finding any excuse you can give not to come up in front of a great group of people and give a speech? It is not. So how do we help people live? By being the party that they think they believe in right now. I'm not asking us to become Democrats or Republicans, but what they think the two parties offer them. Fear turns them to parties that will offer them, quote, security. Fortunately, and unfortunately for us, we have an ally in the state. And it's our ally now because the state is failing. Freedom is our security. Choice and responsibility give you security. Let us become the party of the people. Point out the hypocrisy. Point out the alliance between corporations and government. How government steals from the people to give to corporations of their choosing. Point out the fear that is used to get them to accept controls that are placed on them. We need to convince them that we are the middle class and we are compassionate. Rich men telling middle class and the poor that they do not need social safety nets will never work. But fellow middle class citizens educating them on this, however, will create a change. We need to be players, not spectators. We have our work cut out for us. Fear is a natural emotion. What is not natural, however, is a state that provides every need for free. As they say, nothing in life is free, and that saying applies to government, of course. Abnormal fear of freedom is called, and I don't know if I can say this eleutherophobia. I'm not a psychologist, like I said earlier, but I would almost diagnose the majority of our country with this right now. What is interesting is that there is actually considered a normal fear of freedom. It is time for us to change that. Make fear of freedom a thing of the past. We cannot change people overnight, so do not get discouraged. It will be a long road back, so ready yourself for the long haul. Our freedoms were not taken from us overnight, and so it is unrealistic to think that we will regain them in anything other than decades. So educate and do not compromise, for fear never compromises. So in closing, I just want to thank you for coming and listening, or for listening to my first speech. I am a lot less fearful now than when I first started. Confronting your fears will do that. So when confronting the individual or collective fears of this nation, we must be players, not spectators, and convince others that freedom is the blanket that people should be covering themselves with, not the oppressive blanket of government. Live, let live, and help live. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce Michael Sertic. He has been an advocate for libertarian principles for the last several years. After becoming interested in ideas of liberty while at college, he started a student libertarian group at CSU Sacramento, and later served on the Students for Liberty National Executive Board in 2010. His most recent endeavors include his work at the Foundation for Harmony and Prosperity and Morningstar Self-Management Institute in Sacramento, California. Please welcome Michael Sertic.